publicly at their conventions. So it doesn't matter to them who wins. They've already paid off both sides. And
exactly.
So you're wasting your vote if you vote for a Democrat and Republican. I'll get political here right now.
That's fine.
I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate for president. He's a two-time governor of New Mexico. He used to be a moderate Republican until they drummed him out. And all the Ron Paul supporters, I urge them. Remember, Ron Paul was a Libertarian back in '88, I believe. So the hope is not gone. Gary Johnson is out there. And I urge people, you could send a shockwave through this country if Governor Johnson were to even get 15% of the vote. It would scare them to death. And the reason he won't get more is because these two parties are in charge of who gets to debate. Yeah. The Federal Debate Commission's a fraud. See, up until '92, all presidential debates were run by the League of Women Voters. Well, when Perot debated in '92, he got 20%, 1 out of 5 votes.
Yeah.
It panicked them, so they took it away from the League of Women Voters. They created the Federal Debate Commission, and they put 2 of their former gang heads as head of it. That's why you haven't seen a third person in a presidential debate since '92. Because they won't allow anyone. They say you've got to be polling 15%. Again, when I ran for governor of Minnesota at the primary, I was only polling 10%. 7 weeks later, because I was allowed to debate, I was the governor of Minnesota.
Well, I'm glad someone of your stature is highlighting these things, because you don't hear them, except for the other shows you've done. You hear them nowhere
Mainstream
else.
media won't talk about my election at all, because why? They don't want it to happen again.
No.
You know, they don't want any guy like me, some rogue, some outsider, to come in and beat their system. And again, it's a case of, you know, if they would allow Governor Johnson into the debates, I guarantee you he'd get 20 to 25%, if not win. He would at least get 20 to 25%. And why not hear a third voice? Why does everything have to be black and white or white and black?
Well, that's true.
And they don't allow it. And the two parties are in control. They not only pick your candidate, but they also control the debates, so you're not allowed to hear anybody else but them. They're just like street gangs.
Jesse, we're just about ready for our first break. Why don't you mention your website and the book? And
it's IAin'tGotTimeToBleed.com is my website. My son runs it for me because he's the computer one in my family. I've never even owned a cell phone, nor will I ever.
Good man.
You know, I just I like my freedom, and you know, I'll talk on the hardline phone, but I don't want to talk when I'm in a car. I don't want to talk when I'm doing other things, and nothing's that important to me. I mean, I know some people need cell phones, absolutely, but I'm not one of them. I want to be able to put on my grave, he never owned a cell phone.
Well, that would be unique these days. That really would. Well, Jesse, we'll have about a 4 or 5 minute break, and I want to talk about some of these voting machines that.
Okay.
Theoretically. Okay.
Yeah,
we'll take a quick break then, about 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll be back, guys. We've got a lot to discuss and a lot of really good material. Well, it's sure good to be back with Jesse Ventura for our second half hour, and I guess it's great talking to Jesse. I was, in essence, raised by an old Navy chief, so I have a certain feel for.
Well, like the old chiefs used to say in my day, I've been in since the men. I was in when the men were made of steel and the ships were made of wood. I remember hearing that one all the time.
Well, you know, it's great because something that made me think of it is my older brother, who had like a second father to me. What he had to do, one of the things he said when I was in early 20s, you know, and I was wanting to listen to the news and hear Cronkite or whoever it was. And he said, "What do you want to do that for?" I said, "Well, I mean, you know, find out what's going on." He said, "It's all lies." I said, "What do you mean it's all lies? It's all bullshit." I shouldn't have said that. But, and you know, in his Navy chiefy kind of way, he made it clear that, yes, buddy, this is what it is, so don't believe all that. And then he went into several examples at the time of why it was baloney. And, well, I guess I've always been cynical after that point.
Well, I have too. You know, I'm a great believer in what Thomas Jefferson said: dissension's the greatest form of patriotism. And people need to realize in the last decade we've been made to believe that if you don't agree with your government, you're somehow unpatriotic. Well, it's the opposite. If you don't hold their feet to the fire, you're going to get bad government. And, there's nothing unpatriotic about dissenting at all. That's what this country's supposed to be about.
Well, relative to like the war in Iraq and all this other stuff, and support our troops. Well, of course you support the troops, but I'm discharging the army. I mean,
you know the part that gets me. The troops are keeping us free from what? We haven't been threatened since World War II.
Exactly.
With our freedom. Sure, there might be an act of terrorism that happens every now and then, but it's certainly not going to affect our freedom to the point where they take it away from us. Which right now, I'll tell you what, Al-Qaeda's winning.
Yeah.
They are winning because they set out to change America, and they've done that.
Yeah,
This is not the country that it was 15 years ago.
No.
What it is today. So they're winning because we're falling into the trap. Of a random act of terrorism here and there, and now we've got lockdown. You got the TSA at the airports, and have you heard about the latest in Tennessee, the TSA Viper teams?
No.
Tennessee's the first state that now allows the TSA. They're out on your highways, and they can randomly pull you over, search you and your vehicle for no probable cause.
The TSA?
Yeah, they're going to be in the bus stations, and they're going to be in the train stations soon.
Oh, I think I did hear something about that, but it's actually operable now. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at the McCain-Levin bill. The two Democrat from Michigan, Carl Levin, and John McCain from Arizona on the defense bill. They now made it legal for the United States military to operate inside our country.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
And that, to me, is constitutional treason.
It is.
And no one's saying anything.
Oh.
I went into my local CBS affiliate when this was going down, and I said, how come you're not reporting this to the people? They wrote it all down, and the girl said, well, it'll go upstairs, and they'll determine whether it's on the news, and it never was. Right. Here's something that they're turning our military loose inside our country against us. That means they can arrest you, and they can hold you with no lawyer, no trial indefinitely, forever. All they have to do is say, we suspected you of terrorism, and they get to make that decision, not a judge.
Yeah, and what the definition of terrorism is pretty loose, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, in this country, we're not listening to Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin had a great quote. He said, those that will give up their liberty for security shall have and deserve neither. Because liberty is security. The only way government can make you safe is to take away your freedom, and we seem willing to do that. We seem to think that terrorism is so bad that we should have our freedom taken away to make us safe.
Well, one of the things, just as a layman, I mean, I don't have the, technical insight into the terrorism business, but just as a layman, my business partner and I have talked about this, is, if it's all that, if they're just running amok here and that much of a danger, why don't they just run into a mall in Dallas or Minneapolis or somewhere in the middle of winter with a big coat and do like they do in the Middle East as far as, the suicide bomber types? I mean, in other words, if they're really that legitimate a threat, why haven't they already done that over these last 10, 12 years?
Well, put it this way, more people die in one day of drunk driving than die in a year's worth of terrorism.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And yet we're spending billions to fight this, quote, war on terror.
Frisking grandmothers and...
Well, let's get to the latest Supreme Court thing in Arizona. They're going to allow the police to ask you to show your citizenship. That defies the Constitution.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be able to travel freely within our country, and you don't have to show nothing. And all these people that think that the illegals, well, it's down to zero now because the Mexican economy is coming up and ours is going down.
Oh, really? It's gone. Okay, you might tell the folks.
Zero now. There's no new illegals coming in here.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing for them to come in here for.
I might mention to our listening audience, Jesse has a big insight into it because he spent a lot of time in Mexico and might even wind up living there, retire there.
Well, and here I'll tell you how bad it is. I drive every year. And I cross and go into the Baja. When I go into Mexico, half the time there's nobody even there. I've actually stopped my vehicle, rolled down the windows, and go, doesn't somebody hand you a piece of paper and at least say Buenos Dias?
Yeah.
Yet, when I turn around and come into my country, the country home of the brave, land of the free, last year I waited 2 hours, 7 lanes of traffic.
Right.
To get in. And
when I was like that,
98% of the license plates were U.S.
When I was like that some 15 years ago, because my pseudo brother-in-law used to go to Juarez to the dog track, and the Mexican border stations were usually just completely unmanned. I mean,
yeah, all they care is you're coming in with pesos to spend money.
Yeah,
they don't care if you come in, but yet coming here, and now they have these things in Arizona on the highway where you come to a stop, you sit out in the middle of the desert for at least an hour waiting to clear an immigration when you already cleared it at the border.
Really?
This is an hour into Arizona. And it was funny because when I pulled up to it, my wife right away says, well, I guess we better get our passports out. I said, don't you dare. I said, the Constitution guarantees me I don't have to prove anything. And so when it got up to me, I didn't even roll my window down. The guy come over and tapped on my window. I rolled it down. I looked him right in the eye and said, I'm not showing. I used another word, but I said, I'm not showing you nothing. Yeah. And the guy just looked at me and waved me through.
Right.
Now, what I want to do sometime, I want to get a black wig, put on a pair of sunglasses, and when I pull up to this thing, go, no English, and see if the guy tells me to pull over. And then when he does, I'll take it off and say, I'm the former governor of Minnesota. You're racially profiling. That's against the law.
That'd freak him out pretty good.
You know?
I bet it would.
Well, it's absurd. And people don't realize if the illegal immigrants are kept out of this country, you know what's going to happen? The entire agricultural economy of California is going to collapse. Mm-hmm. Because who do you think picks the strawberries and all that stuff? It ain't me. If I do it, and people need to remember, if you stop the illegals from coming in here and doing that farm work, the price of your food is probably going to double or triple, and then everyone will wonder, how could that happen? Well, if Jesse Ventura's out there picking strawberries, I'm going to charge you $200 an hour.
I don't think it'll work out so good.
You know, the price is going to go up if I do it.
Right.
And it's absurd. You know how I feel? People will disagree with me. I'm for open borders. Ronald Reagan was too.
Really?
And I'll tell you why. All borders are man-made fences that create hostility between human beings. If you're on one side of the fence, you right away are suspicious of who's ever on the other side of the fence. Mm-hmm. And granted, I'm biased because I live in Mexico now for 5 months out of the year. I love the people down there. I love the lifestyle. And those people, they're looking to survive. They're not worried about what's going on in the stock market. They're worried about, do I have enough food tomorrow?
Right. Now that's in the Baja Peninsula is where you go, or I guess?
Yeah. I live 850 miles down the Baja.
Yeah, I thought I'd read that. Boy, you get to go fishing and all that other stuff, too, huh?
I don't have to fish. I got a guy that comes to my back door every Saturday. I can get 7 lobster tails for $40. Are you kidding me?
Really?
What do I need to go fishing for?
I guess you don't.
He comes every Saturday. Gets anything you want. You know, red snapper, shrimp, lobster, whatever I want. He just comes up and toots his horn at the end of my driveway. And I come out with my pesos, and I got seafood for a week.
Pretty good.
Right out of the ocean, ready to go.
I forget the show that was based in the Baja, back in the 90s, some show or other. I forget what it was, but sure looked pretty when I did see it, the scenes they had. I forget what the heck that was. Now, I know we did talk about the media just for briefly, and I know in everybody's mind, we talked about it a little at the breaks, but in everybody's mind is when the heck another season of the Conspiracy Files is going to be on.
My show?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you this. We did 2 years, 8 shows a year, and last fall we did our 3rd season, 8 more shows. We finished them in November. They were ready to go. They went to True TV, who does a little editing on them, and they still haven't seen the light of day. I believe I'm being censored. I believe this year's were even more controversial, and there's obviously people in high places that don't want you to see what we've learned. And I'll give an example of what happened without telling what the subject is.
Okay.
We did a show And one of my little 22-year-old interns made a call to a former military colonel in Georgia, and this was what the quote she got. "Don't you understand, young lady, that people that look into this end up dead?"
Huh.
Now that's a threat.
Yeah, sure.
Well, she quit my show. She was getting married in a couple of months, and she thought, I don't need this, and I don't blame her.
Yeah.
Well, we continued and did the show. I brought in a whistleblower named Dr. Fred Bell, and I met with him in Minnesota. When he was done off the record, he says to me, "Well, you know I have a CIA handler, don't you?" And I said, "Well, that doesn't surprise me." I said, "With what you know, that's not surprising." And then he said to me off the record, he goes, "He's going to go ballistic when he finds out I talked to you."
Really?
Well, we put all our guests up in the hotel, right? 24 hours later, Dr. Fred Bell's dead in his hotel.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Like, that's a coincidence.
Wait,
wow.
This is all on the show. We cover it on the show. I
Really?
call up the Minneapolis Police Chief Dolan, and I tell him the whole background, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he says to me, "Well, we've got a great autopsy doctor. We'll know." The guy didn't even give me a courtesy call back. I'm the former governor.
Right.
And he didn't even bother to call me up to say what the autopsy revealed or anything about it.
Well, he was probably told to say what it revealed, yeah.
Well, that shows you how my shows this year were getting into obviously territory that some people obviously don't want the public to know about. And
Right.
they haven't seen the light of day right now. 8 of them are done. They normally go on in January. It's now going into July. I highly doubt if you'll ever see them.
Well, I know, because I think at one time, I think your son was on Coast to Coast or something, and they were talking about, the season would be upcoming, and I guess it was still, this was several months back, if I remember correctly. And, I mean, little blurbs, it looked like, things are going to, the third season is going to come to pass, and then just nothing, no development.
Yeah. Well, they also took one off the air that you can't even get anymore or find, and that was the one, why did Homeland Security order FEMA to build 6 internment camps in our country?
Oh, yeah.
For who? And it aired once. They then took it off. You can't even get it on the. They won't even acknowledge we did it now.
I know it. Well, I didn't know that, but I'll tell you. Well, I have a story I've told on other shows, and we'll get back into the book issues in just a second. But I got to tell you this: there was this. Now, this is way back, Jesse, in the '90s, when they had that. There was that show Sightings with John White. I think was the guy that was the host, and they had a lot of different interesting things. But the show that I was going to see. I saw the teaser for it, but I had to go out of town on business, and for whatever reasons of travel, I couldn't see the show. Okay. The subject matter was the telepathic capabilities of our intelligence agencies. Now, I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but I know some people that have been on the fringes of that, and yes, they were telepathic, and I promise you there's some validity to what they're saying. And, okay, back at the time, you had Burrell transcripts. They didn't, I didn't have, CDs or anything like that. I just, I was going to buy the Burrell transcript of the show since I couldn't see it. I went through Sightings one by one for the whole 8 years they were on. Couldn't find the show. Same kind of thing. Couldn't find anything. And I saw 4 or 5 teasers on the show. I mean, I wasn't having delusions, and that's exactly what happened. So, I mean, for people listening, this stuff does happen. Believe me, it does.
Well, I thought our season was the best ever this year, and it's just a shame that people aren't going to get a chance to see them. I mean, you don't have to believe the conspiracies, but they're still provocative and entertaining.
Well, they are, and that was one of the few things. I don't get all hepped up about seeing just a whole lot of things, but that was one thing I was just like a puppy dog at the screen, because I love conspiracies, and it was well done. You dealt with all the major issues that and of course, obviously quite a few more that I knew of, and it was just a darn enjoyable program. And, I just hope that you can break your way through the stonewalling. But
we'll see what happens anyway, but, who knows? Anyway, again, getting back to the book for a minute, if we could.
Yeah, sure.
I challenge any Republican or Democrat to read this book and still vote for them, because if they do, they're the problem, not the solution, because the corruption of these two parties is beyond belief, and what they've done to our country. I mean, they're responsible. They've been in charge for almost 150 years, and I think that the big problem with people in this country today, we've somehow, through the media and our government, have lost the fact that we're in charge. They're supposed to work for us.
I know,
not the opposite.
Totally lost. That's totally
not the
lost.
opposite. But we have a mindset now to go along and get along. Don't say anything, because if you speak out against the government, you're unpatriotic, and that somehow we work for them. It's not supposed to be that way. They're supposed to work for us, and until we get that mindset back, I just dread what this country's going to turn into.
I agree with you. And, I don't want to be overly cynical, but I mean, it seems to apply in this case. When, we had when I started the show on this network, on the Kevin Cook Show, our first guest was Susan Lindauer. She was a 911 author and actually a participant to a certain extent. She was a CIA asset. And it came up, one of the things that came up, we're talking about entrenched money and power groups. Bush's family, Bush Sr. and Jr., they're the primary stockholders of the Carlyle Group, which makes defense armored personnel carriers and other things. And Halliburton, of course, Cheney was CEO of that. And, gee, what do you think? It's so surprising. As soon as they got to the office, they started a war. I mean, that was...
Well, you want to hear even better? You know whose company was in charge of security at the World Trade Center? Bush's brother, Neil.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, they had security at the World Trade Center. They were in charge of all of it.
And what do you
people thickens, and then if you want to go back even farther, go back to the Bay of Pigs in Cuba.
Yeah.
When, of course, Kennedy wouldn't give military support, and it ended up a huge disaster and failure, right?
Right.
But the good part, because Kennedy wouldn't give support, well, there were 2 ships down there in support of the Bay of Pigs, and the 2 ships belonged to Zapata Oil, and one of them was actually named the Barbara. It was Bush Sr. He was involved. It was his oil company ships that were there in support of the Bay of Pigs invasion at Cuba.
Wow. And wasn't George Bush, I don't mean to interrupt, but wasn't George Bush Sr., wasn't he also a weird visitor to Dallas right about the time of the assassination?
Oh, yeah. And also, he even told a slight fib. When they were making him head of the CIA, he said he had never been part of it. And that's a bit of a fib. And so when he got elected president and when he became vice president under Reagan, that put the CIA in the White House.
I guess so.
For the first time, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, it's a very interesting stuff to read about, and all this. And, and much of it, I mean, on my TV show, I couldn't believe we had a full confession to the murder of John Kennedy.
Oh, really?
And it didn't receive 1 minute of regular media. E. Howard Hunt confessed to his son, St. John Hunt. He's got it written. He's got it on tape and the whole thing. He called it the big event. He even told who was in charge of it. He said it was William Harvey, who, if you go back, he was the head of the CIA's assassination units at that time, and David Sanchez Morales. And Morales became famous about 3 years later, or 5 years later, whatever it was. He was down in Bolivia when they captured Che Guevara, put him up against a wall, and shot him dead.
Yeah.
And that, so that's where, and rumor has it he used to wear Che Guevara's Rolex watch as like a trophy.
Right. Wow.
And so, here we have a full confession from a CIA guy, Howard Hunt, and not anybody even cared. And if you look closely at the photo of the 3 tramps that were taken in Dallas, the old tramp, if that's not Howard Hunt, it's his twin brother.
Yeah. That's why I missed that doggone show. Is there any way you could have it produced in
which one, mine?
Yeah.
My show? You can get it off the internet. Just go to True TV. You can pull it right off of there.
No, but I mean the new season. If they won't carry it, is there any way to get it?
Oh, I know they own it.
Oh, okay.
You got to remember they're the money people. So True TV owns the 8 episodes. There's nothing I can do about it.
Oh, so they bought it, paid for it, so that's it. Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
So it's theirs.
Oh boy, so they can seal it up.
Sure. If it doesn't see the light of day, there isn't anything I can do about it.
Well, that's anybody that's listening that has a inquisitive mind might think about this. With all due respect, Jesse's show was the only show of any note on True TV. I mean, a few other little silly things, but nothing of any magnitude.
Well, that's what they try to do to my show. They try to dumb it down like all their other shows.
Yeah.
And I fight with them all the time over it. I go, look, you've already got the dumb audience. Why don't you try to get an intelligent one with my show?
Exactly.
But they try to dumb mine down all the time. That's what happens in the editing. And I'm sure if these 8 come out, they're not going to be anything like what we completed in California. They're going to edit them down and make them look stupid in the end, probably. I don't know.
Well, for those listening, believe me, Jesse's show is the only show on True TV that I'd, walk across the room to listen to. And anybody that is suspicious